Hi, just testing the audio.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm testing my audio.
Thank you. We can hear you.
Thanks. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Afternoon.
Hi there.
Day.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks, Melvin. There.
Hello. Mayor, but we do have a quorum if you want to get started.
Okay, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, but I will announce that this meeting is officially convened. You want to call the roll?
Yes, the time is 1:03. Councilmember Bates. I understand he is going to be absent. Councilmember Jimenez,
Present.
Vice Mayor Johnson is absent. Councilmember Martinez is absent. Councilmember McLaughlin.
Here.
Councilmember Willis
Here.
and Mayor Butt.
Okay, I'm looking for the agenda. Here it is.
So Mayor, I think we can let Jean, Jean is the facilitator for this afternoon. Jean Bonander is with Finesse the Future, and she has been working to help bring this together this afternoon. And she will be able to help facilitate most of the conversation with you all today. Does that sound good?
Yeah, well, I found the agenda. So the next item on the agenda is memo from Jean Bonander. And then after that is public comment. And then after that is council workshop. So it says item B, memo from Jean Bonander, facilitator, B1 memo.
Yeah,
So-
and I think that actually folds into the item following public comment. Jean, should we go to public comment at this time?
Yeah, let's go to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment at this time?
Have 3 speakers. And each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. Sabrina, can you call the speakers, please?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. So I have Sally Tobin, Jean Quartz, and Pam Stello. Sally, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start when you're ready.
Okay, I should be unmuted. I'm Sally Tobin. I'm a Richmond resident. Everyone involved in Richmond city government, from officials to staff to the public to guest speakers, should be treated with courtesy and respect. Staff and officials have responsibilities to contribute to good government. The public and guests are attending and speaking because they care about good government. Those who support good government should pay courteous attention to each other, even if they disagree. Richmond needs a welcoming environment for the public, including invited speakers. But in city council meetings that I have attended personally, I have seen shouting by council members, unjustified threats to clear the council chambers, disrespect to council members by the mayor, and most recently, disrespect to an invited speaker. I cannot address matters between city staff and officials, but as a member of the public, I believe that a hostile environment for public expression has been created. Sadly, intimidating conduct only leads to more division and distraction from the critical issues that are facing Richmond. Consequently, I was very happy to see the Sunnyvale Code of Ethics and Conduct, which emphasizes a broad range of excellent behaviors for elected and appointed officials. I hope that Richmond will be able to achieve a more balanced and flexible form of government that works together and welcomes public comment. To quote Charles Pickering, a healthy democracy requires a decent society. It requires that we are honorable, generous, tolerant, and respectful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jeannie Quartz. Jeannie, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Yes, thank you. Jeannie Quartz, Richmond resident. For the city council, I would like to see implemented some kind of rule, maybe a motion to censure that ensures city council members must be respectful of each other, public speakers, and experts invited to give presentations to the city council. There have been numerous times, too many to count, when our mayor has degraded and bullied residents who are exercising their First Amendment rights respectfully. He has denounced speakers as old and white, even when all the speakers on an issue are not white or old. NIMBYs, anti-development, for raising issues that he disagrees with or are not in line with his projects or plans. His personal attacks are not limited to city council. They are in the press, on social media platforms, and in his e-forum. I know residents who do not speak at city council meetings or write to the city council or express their beliefs or experiences on social media because they have fear being attacked by the mayor. These attacks are a long-standing strategy to silence residents. The victims are Richmond families and youth who do not feel safe, and all of us who are robbed of hearing the voices of all our residents. Regarding experts who present to the city, as long as the experts are in the mayor's camp, he welcomes them and lets them present for as long as it takes to present. I was horrified, embarrassed, and ashamed by Mayor Butt's treatment of Dr. Christina Hill, a UC Berkeley associate professor and an expert on climate change and sea level rise. He was rude to her at the city council meeting and in his e-forum. Her presentation contained information the mayor finds threatening to his agenda. Fortunately, she was able to speak for 10 minutes, but she had to delete a lot of what she wanted to present to the council. Anyone who works for a company or corporation who treats their staff, their customers, and their guests in this way would be fired. Therefore, I ask that some kind of rule be put in place so this kind of bullying and harassment of residents and disregard for free speech and democracy not be allowed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Pam Stello. Pam, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. I support Sally Tobin and Jeannie Kortz's previous comments. And I want to add that I hope that the council can find a method to censure the mayor's ad hominem attacks, especially. Please do not give the mayor greater control on what items are heard by the city council and for how long. Please do not let the mayor unfairly shackle discussion, hearings, and debate by the broader council of items of significant interest to the community, which the mayor opposes. And I want to just add that ad hominem attacks that divert from the issues important to the public make people fearful to speak. I do have neighbors who won't speak at council or even on social media because of attacks specifically by the mayor and his sons. It undermines our corruption. It creates a great deal of tension among council members and between the council and the public. And it creates a great deal of public distrust in the institution. And I hope that today you can work to build, to find ways that can build that trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tarnell Abbott. Tarnell, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Tarnell Abbott, Richmond resident. I agree with what the previous speaker said. I also want to say that every time you change up how you call on public speakers, people don't understand when to raise their hands because you change it from week to week, which is very capricious. And that is a big disservice and a big disrespect to the public. I would like to say that regarding item D1, I think that this is about the consolidation of power on the part of the city manager and on the part of the mayor, and I think it is wrong. I think that you should let your city council members do their job as our elected representatives, and you should be mindful of the fact that it is the people of Richmond who you are all bound to serve, not, your little faction. So, you need to be paying attention to how that administration of democracy undermines democracy and stop doing that. You need to, in regards to item D2, the policy priorities, I would like the staff to get behind the community and find legal ways to extricate the city of Richmond from the development agreements, both with Zeneca and with Point Malati. With regards to Zeneca, you have a health and safety clause. This thing is so dangerous that the current deed restrictions do not allow childcare centers, daycare centers, hospitals, senior facilities, or schools for anyone under the age of 21. Why in the world are you trying to build housing out there? You need to get behind the community.
Time
and
has
stop
expired.
this
Thank you.
thing now.
The next speaker is Deborah Baer. Deborah, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. When I read the agenda, I was a little confused because it seemed like it was two parts and I didn't know how they fit together. And one part was how the council related to each other. It was like kind of that retreat thing. And your questions were how you feel and who you are. You know, we've all been to those things and it's great. Okay. And I hope you achieve that. And then how the council relates to the staff. And I have seen conflict and I've seen members of the council, especially the mayor, being rude to the staff, you know, and there's tensions between people. So I think that's fine. And then the second part was about changing processes. And it seemed like I don't know how those two things fit together. But I want to just talk about the first part because I think there was nothing in there about how the council relates to the public. And as a member of the public, that's what I encounter. And people have talked about Dr. Hill, you know, that was most recently. But I'm more concerned, she had this little smile on her face because she's used to that kind of stuff. While she was being kind of put down, she just had a little smile and she seemed like she's a woman in the sciences. She's telling people things they don't want to know and she's experienced in it. But in the mayor's recent e-forum, what I was mostly offended by was his attack on Tamisha Torres Walker. And she's an amazing person. She has done so much for Richmond. Her work on safe return has been admirable. I am knocked out by her. And the fact that she was arrested 22 times before she was 18 shows where she has come from to become the woman she is. And for somebody who grew up in a position of privilege, which I assume Mayor Butt sort of did, to put down a woman like Tamisha and try to demean her when they should be praising her mightily, which is how I feel about her. I feel like she's a wonderful person and I was offended.
Time has expired. Thank you. And that was the last public speaker.
Okay, so I guess at this time we turn it over to Jean for the rest of the program.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Butt, and welcome all participants, council members, staff, and members of the public. Thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon with us, and we hope that the discussion will be enlightening and healthy and achieve some good outcomes on behalf of all parties involved. Just by way of introduction, I am Jean Bonander. I'm the facilitator for today's workshop. My experience includes 30 years in local government in California with 4 different cities, including 20 years of that time as a city manager. In the past 10 years, I've successfully consulted with more than 15 local governments and affiliated organizations on communications, organizational development, strategic planning and goal setting, and performance evaluations and plans. And the purpose of today's workshop is a discussion to offer ideas, suggestions, and facilitate conversation among the council members about ways to more productively communicate regarding the unique and the routine issues facing the city of Richmond. Then determine if you would like to schedule another workshop in the future to discuss priorities, goals, and objectives. The council has the sole discretion about what it wishes to do, if anything, and if and how it wishes to proceed from here forward. Like most governing bodies in California and beyond, you transitioned exceptionally quickly and well to a virtual environment during the pandemic crisis. Even so, virtual meetings are limited in helping to build working relationships. And you may have worked together on community issues prior to joining the council. And so some of you may already have shared information and stories with one another about your efforts and with your colleagues. And relationship building is a necessary component of representative governance. The business of serving the electorate and your constituents on a representative governance body like the city council requires consensus building and collaboration with the others to reach decisions and outcomes for the betterment of the community. Individual council members cannot provide direction to each other or to staff, and only a consensus or a majority of the whole may do that. The voice that each of you brings to this process has equal value in decision-making. And with that, I have some presentation materials that I'd like to start with. First, I believe I may need to either screen co-host or in order to screen share, if that is possible. Very good, thank you. So with this screen, it's simply the opening outline of the agenda. And from here, we're going to start the discussion. And for this, at this point in time, I asked the council if they would engage in a little bit of a homework assignment, a very short comment in answer to 2 questions. And I would like to go from this workshop agenda to those 2 questions. To the next slide, please describe a life experience that shaped you and shapes how you make council level decisions. And please tell us about a lesson you've learned that helps you work with others. And for ease of reference, I'm going to give you a brief example of the kind of story that you could tell. And I'm sure yours will be much better than mine, but here's my take at it. 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, I had an opportunity to live in Taipei, Taiwan, with some friends of the family. And for about a year, I was immersed in a different culture and a way of life unlike anything previously known to me. Different was the key component. Living under a military dictatorship with monitoring, censorship, and travel restrictions, and unusual food, culture, ethnicity, weather, you name it. What I learned was to appreciate the differences, to find ways to manage myself and my activities to accommodate others and to participate without creating offense. From this experience came my love of travel, my ability to eat almost anything, and my curiosity and wonder about the future and other places. Every day in public service, I use this experience to help me find and see other ways of thinking and doing things and alternative ways to approach and resolve issues. So that's my learning out of the second step. And I'd like to ask the council members who are at the meeting here today, if you could share this kind of information with me and with your colleagues and with staff and the members of the public as an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. And before I do that, I just wanted to open it real quickly. Are there any questions, anything that you would like to say at this point in time before I ask council members to respond to these 2 questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for that roll call. And I wonder if also we can hear not only from the city council, but from the city manager probably, or the city attorney about that experience. since also we, and at least from the city managing scene also, we work really close. And this is around that collaboration among all of us.
I think that's an excellent idea. If that's acceptable to the council as a whole, if you could nod your heads, that would be great. Good, thank you. May I start with you, Mayor Butt?
Sure. Life experience. I think what what focuses the way what I bring to this job is basically my 50 years experience as an architect and my educational experience in the same field. Architecture is a lot more like government than most people might think. It's essentially a problem-solving profession. It's a profession where you have an objective. You have to come up with a solution, and there are a lot of constraints. If you're looking at a building or a part of a building or a remodel or something along those lines, you've got a lot of constraints. You got budgets. You got the constraints of technology. You got a lot of rules and regulations, building codes, things like that you have to conform to. And then ultimately you've got to work with people. And if you have a lot of people who have a stake in what the ultimate solution is, typically they've all got different ideas about how to get there. Maybe everybody wants a corner office. Maybe everybody wants to be on the first floor. Maybe person A wants to be next to person B, or person B wants to be next to the cafeteria, or you name it. So at the end of the day, the architect's job is to know what all the constraints are and try to end up with a product that will make everybody happy, or at least will function. And government's a lot like that. It takes a lot of work to understand the problems, understand the issues. You have to work with a lot of people. And at the end of the day, if you're going to be successful, you have to come up with something that everybody can live with. So again, I think being in government and being a legislator really is a lot like being an architect, and that training is it's good training for it.
Great, thank you, Mayor Butt. I see Vice Mayor Johnson is part of the group. Vice Mayor Johnson, would you be willing to contribute at this time? And thank you all for staying within the time frame too that I requested, which is about 5 minutes or less.
Of course. So please describe your life experience that shaped you. When I guess growing up in Richmond, 4 generations, that history of growing up under the policies that have been carried out in the past few generations, and then also the combination of my policy school experience. Goldman School of Public Policy really gives us really gave me an opportunity to look at some of the policies that I did grow up under, and my parents and grandparents, and some of the things that Richmond has been doing over the past few decades. And so I'm not saying that, we determined what worked and what didn't work and what was right and wasn't right, but at the same time, we had the opportunity to see what worked and what needed to be changed. And so when I'm making policy decisions, or when I'm approaching policy decisions on the council, I'm bringing that academic rigor as well as that experience, those generations of experience coupled with that. So.
And what about lesson learned? What is there a key lesson that you think you can share with the others that help everyone understand how you make decisions?
One of the key lessons learned is that, and I think I say this a lot, no one person or no one party has this solve all be all, the magic answer for this diverse group of people we call Americans or even Richmond residents. It's about coming together to find out how we can all use our different experiences and different policy approaches to make it work for everybody. But this steamroll approach is not going to work, and it never will work. And the fact that data is being, data is used to make a lot of the decisions that we do carry out. And of course, the data informs it, but then also, as I've said before, if it's in a time of a crisis, we act. But at the same time, if there's time to look at data and there's time to do things right, and there's time to make sure that the municipal corporation, which we were sworn in to serve, is taken care of, and that we're taking care of our duty in that regards. And so, yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I ask Councilmember Jimenez if she would share some insights with us about experience and lessons?
Yeah, thank you. I think the life experience that shaped my life was that I was privileged to work with small farmers in the Andes Mountains in Colombia. And it was right when I finished my architectural degree. So I agree with some of the statements that Mayor Tombat said about architects. And I had the amazing opportunity to be part of a team of architects, social workers, engineers, agronomists, and community leaders to work in a participatory project to support the community to build first 50 houses for small farmers who had lost their house in a peat flood in 1999. And I learned how to bring technical expertise and do social work. I learned how to work with different agencies at the local, regional, country, and international level to bring the project to a reality. And while doing that, collaboration to make, I was part of making sure that the voices of those affected were at the table, and that these voices were the ones informing the decision of the solution. And for over 10 years, I worked in the Andes Mountain with housing projects like the one is called Que Viva la Montaña, to regional planning process using social cartography, to create a community platform that was used by small farmers to design and advocate policies to improve the livelihood in the territories. But also the experience of coming to the US and had the immigrant experience of learning English, doing a Master of Environmental Planning at UC Berkeley, and work in Richmond and Contra Costa as a community organizer. And I learned many lessons from the immigrant community, as well as many community members who are coming home, who were and are coming home from incarceration. And one of these lessons is the need for working more in coalition. And this is why I co-founded with many others, Live at Contra Costa, a table with community and political organization and labor to support to implement a more progressive agenda in the county. And I think like one thing that I feel like is very important is the willingness to listen to different point of views and to have the time to have deep conversation to understand other people. I always think about this phrase by Robert Jones Jr. that says, quote, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist," unquote. And I quote that to say that in many instances, we can disagree and it's okay, but we need to have respect and do not attack the humanity and the recognition of other people's knowledge and experiences. As a woman of color, as an immigrant, and as a person who doesn't, her English is not her first language. I have experience for many instances. They're looking down to me because they feel like I am not smart enough to be in positions and in this position as well. So I think this is important to recognize the humanity of people and to look for the experience and knowledge that each one of us bring to the table. And I want to finish with this. I think right now we are experiencing a difficult situation. As we move to open, we need to be planning how the city is going to support those who have been severely impacted by the pandemic. We need to have these important discussions and to be in spending our time and attention to how we are going to support to the COVID-19 recovery, just transition, how to support youth and people who are dealing with mental health, homeless, and employment. And this is what I want to see our conversations really be taking the time. And I think we can do it in our city council meetings when we are going to talk about budget and about other things that we need to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Forgive me for not muting or muting. And that was very insightful. Thank you very much. Councilmember Martinez, may I ask you to step up and give us about 5 minutes of your experience and your lessons learned, please?
Yeah, I think we've looked at this differently. For me, the most impactful experience is the one that's earliest in my life. And I was raised by a single parent, my father. And my father, being Latino, recognized that his people were discriminated against. And when migrant workers came through our hometown of Dumas, Texas, he always provided our house as a place for them to cook a meal, to take a bath, to sleep before they went on their journey. So this sense of being part of community and helping people was very impactful to me. And my father also felt that it was his responsibility to make sure that I understood my roots. And so he had me spend the summer working with migrant workers away from home. So I went to Hale Center, Texas to work with migrant workers. And while I was there, I realized that the city was divided into 3 sections. There was the freeway and the railroad tracks. To the east of the railroad tracks is where the African Americans lived. Between the railroad tracks and the freeway is where the Latinos lived. And on the other side of the freeway was the city and the whites. And the only times brown and black people crossed the freeway was when they went shopping or when they went to the movies. So there was a segregation that was built into the system, and seeing this made me realize that this is something that is institutionalized and that this was something that I needed to change wherever I was at. And being here in the city council, that is my major concern, to deinstitutionalize racism and to make sure that everyone has an equal chance to express themselves, to live life to the fullest. And so everything that I've experienced, everything that I've done since then is flavored by those 2 experiences. I was part of a commune. When I was part of the commune, I was new to the group. So for a long time, I was an outsider. And as an outsider, I would watch people relate to each other. So I got an understanding of personal dynamics, human dynamics. And I think that's something that also helps me navigate the personality issues that that the city seems to be beleaguered with. So that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you very much for your explanation and your time. Let's see, where am I now? Councilmember McLaughlin, may I ask you to step up and give us the benefit of your experience and your lessons learned, please?
Yes, of course. So there's two different questions here. So let me start with the first, a life experience. This is a life experience that really helped shape my whole political character, I guess you could say. It was in 1968. I grew up in Chicago, and in 1968, the Democratic Convention was held in Chicago, and many of us remember it was there was a lot of protesting going on outside of the convention place where the convention was being held. And I came home one day seeing my mother watching the television in a state of shock. This was during the week of the convention in '68. There was live coverage of demonstrators against the war in Vietnam being clubbed, beaten, and arrested by the police. And the brutality that was seen there against these young protesters really outraged my mother. It totally unnerved her. And she kept saying over and over again, look at what they're doing, look at what they're doing, as if she couldn't believe her own eyes. She knew she had teens, young teens. I was a pretty young teenager at the time. But she felt that pain and injustice as if those blows were falling on her own children. I don't think she realized just how much her outrage delivered me to a new view of the world at that point, meaning you have to stand up for what you believe in. And there is often a great deal of resistance. So that experience really shaped me. There was another one, just quickly. My grandmother worked in factories, and she just was a feisty woman, and there would be my mother worked with her in factories, and they had flooding up to their ankles. She took the bus all the way to Chicago City Hall and complained and got things to change. I knew then that you could stand up to City Hall and win. So those two things really impacted me. What I learned from it all, I would say, or the lesson that I learned overall in my life came very young. My parents really wanted us to be good human beings. Their goal was to help us develop our character, to have become good, decent, kind human beings. They didn't necessarily want us to rise in the ladder of success. I think too many parents, I came from a, working class family. My dad was laid off on and off, and there were hardship in the family. And it was clear that, some people who have that poverty, or that off and on poverty, I should say, well, my kid is going to rise in the system and show it could be done. My parents were like, no, what's more important is that you become decent human beings. They intrinsically, I believe, knew the system was unfair. And it was more important for us to become these decent human beings than it was to rise in an unfair system. And that has impacted me in terms of how my work continuously stays at the grassroots level, and in solidarity with those who are also struggling in this unjust society that we all live in. So those are my stories.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councilmember McLaughlin. Very interesting. And Councilmember Willis, are you ready to tell us your experience and your lesson learned, please?
Yeah, my experience. Ooh, okay. Yeah, my experience for me is a bit of a weird one, but it's my story, and I'm a weird guy, so it's okay. I did grow up in Richmond my whole life, but I did grow up in a single parent household because my dad did pass away 12 days before I was born. So it was always just my mom and I. And was the very low income experience. Like, yes, I was able to eat. Yes, I had a roof over my head, but I also knew that I wasn't able to like open up a magazine and be like, oh my God, this new game system is out. Can I get it? It was always like, no, we gotta wait. You can't have that. You can't have that. Did you just eat today? And, you know, that was fine. I got used to that, but it also instilled this thing into me to where at a young age, it's like, I can't have what other people have. I would see people have things that I would want, and I couldn't. It was always a barrier for me. So that made me feel really depressed. And as I was actually going through my elementary school, middle school, and high school, I was able to make some friends, but there was like a skyrocketing of bullying and me having to defend myself and fight back that happened. So that also created a sense of isolation where I told the friends I did have, I'm like, you know, at this point, the only reason I'm around is because of my mom. After whatever happens with that, I don't know what I'm going to do in life. Like, that was where I was for the longest time. But one thing that was always in me was just knowing that I always didn't have an answer and everybody had differences of opinion, but just being able to listen and help people and be objective and learn and see things from other people's point of view and respect that point of view while not compromising on my own. And I've been at this point been a community organizer for 9.5 years, and it forced me to go into the community that I was conditioned to be scared of by actually knocking on people's doors and talking about issues and concerns that they had. And I didn't expect to get on that to lead to being on city council. But one thing I remember from talking to community members is feeling like nobody was really representing them, but I would be willing to step up and represent that voice when other people were too scared to. So I was like, you know, the community also needs to step up and be that representative themselves. So I try to be here, be respectful, and have my point of view.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much. Teresa, may I ask you if per Claudia's suggestion, if you would be willing to share an experience and a lesson learned, and then Laura thereafter?
Sure. The life experience, one life experience that really shaped really my career and my passion for trying to make a difference and to help people in the world was an experience I had as a very junior lawyer. I had the opportunity and went to Brownsville, Texas with a team of lawyers who were coming there to provide pro bono representation to individuals who had come across the border, who had come from either Central America or even South America, and were seeking political asylum. And when we got there, we showed up and they are, you know, about to be clients had been jailed. And none of the individuals that I worked with or any of the others that were with me had committed any crimes other than the crime of crossing the border. And so they were being jailed and being held in a facility that and had been there for an incredibly long period of time. The facility was, I will just say, not the best circumstances. And it was very crowded. It was a facility where it was incredibly hot. We were there, I believe it was in August, and you can imagine how a very crowded facility where individuals were being incarcerated might be. We were there and I represented a number of people, just listening to their stories, incredibly heartbreaking stories about what had happened to them that drove them to try to come to the country and seek political asylum, and trying to cobble together some level of proof or some understanding so that when they presented their case, that they would not be denied for lack of proof. And I spent a long time working with the clients that I had and really trying to understand their stories, understand their perspectives, and trying to figure out how to tell their story in a way that the story would be heard and that they may be able to seek political asylum. That really, I think, cemented my my knowledge that I really aspired to have a legal career that allowed me to work to help individuals, to work to help people who may not have the resources or may be in a system that it doesn't give them the resources to really help themselves. In terms of a lesson that I have learned along the way that really helps me do my work as an attorney is really the art of listening and really hearing and understanding that you may not really understand where someone is coming from unless you take the time to dig a little deeper and really talk to them and listen in a very open way. And what you gain from that is a much different type of understanding than you would have if you had just assumed from a very surface statement what was intended. And so I really feel like one of the biggest things I can do to do my job is to really hear and ask open-ended questions so that I can really understand what is intended by what I thought I heard.
Thank you, Teresa. Very interesting background and lesson learned. And Laura, may I ask you to give us the benefit of your experience and your lesson?
Sure, thank you. There's two stories that I think of that are most relevant to the motivation and the commitment I have to my current career path. One of them was when I was an intern. I had the opportunity to be an intern for Jackie Spear. Jackie Spear is now a congresswoman from California. When I was an intern with her, she was a county supervisor. And the internship was about a year long. And there were about halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, there were several of us. I wasn't the only intern. About halfway through that experience, time was found so that she was able to come into a small conference room with us interns and was able to share her experience with Jonestown. So it was unbelievable to hear her firsthand and how she talked about that experience. At the time, she was not talking about it very much publicly. And the fact that she almost lost her life and others she was traveling with in Jonestown did lose their lives trying to serve and help those from their community was incredibly just awe-inspiring to me, you know, to almost give your life to help people. As part of that internship, I was able to develop a brochure for, this was in the era when everything was still hard copy. There was nothing electronic in the world at that time, essentially. And we developed a brochure for homeless youth. And it was similar to how it is now in some places, in that resources were spread out throughout all kinds of county facilities through nonprofits, and there was no single source of information. And so we developed this brochure and produced copies so that law enforcement, so that social workers, so that in grocery stores, we could put these out where hopefully people would have a better chance to kind of do a one-stop shop to be able to get the resources they need. And that really, it just felt amazing to be able to have hopefully some kind of positive impact for people. A second experience in terms of the motivation was I too, like Jean, I actually had an opportunity to live in Asia. And I was there during some turbulence, some violent turbulence. And I just really, really came to ever more appreciate, you know, when you see things, you're living in a different place and you're seeing so many things that are so different. I came really, really appreciative of the American form of democracy. And the freedoms and the press and the transparency and everything that we enjoyed here. And that really cemented my belief in American democracy. In terms of that kind of working together component, it took from that internship, it was about another 15 or so years before I actually came to work for local government. And when I came to work for local government, I knew immediately that that was where I wanted to spend the rest of my career, and that I wanted to help and to serve and to become a city manager. When I had that first experience, I wrote the housing element for the first ever state-approved housing element for that community. And then we promised in that housing element, we were going to write a below market rate ordinance. This was an ordinance that was going to make private developers do below market rate housing for the community that had very little below market rate housing. And what I learned from that was about compromise. Not everybody, people have a lot of positions. There's a lot of validity in all of the positions. And it's important to keep in mind the broader good and the greater good to come up with something, even if it's not perfect, where you have enough compromise that you can at least move forward, meeting some of those needs and some of that greater good.
Wow. Thank you very much, Laura. You all have wonderful experiences to share with each other and with your communities. And I'd like to ask you at this point, just generally, any thoughts about how what you've learned can, and this knowledge of each other, how it can help you work together and help you make decisions? Some of the common themes I heard is that many of you came out of situations where you had an opportunity to learn about divisiveness and not compromise. And yet here you are on a city council where your goal is to work with 6 other people to come to compromise and make decisions. What have you learned from each other? How can you use this to help move forward at this point? No particular thoughts at this moment?
Gene, I'll jump in there. I think one thing that a common thread that I saw, that I heard throughout my colleagues' responses is just the yearning to help people. Mm-hmm. We all have our, like, as mentioned, we have our different experiences and whatnot, but at the end of the day, we just want to help.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good basis for this kind of work. Tom, do I see you?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I pretty much.
Oh.
Mayor, you keep muting and unmuting somehow. There might be some paper or something on your computer. You're muted at the moment. There we go.
I'll start over again. So, I pretty much knew the backgrounds of most people on the city council, but there were a few things I learned today, and I think that I think the thing that at least 5 of you have in common is that at some time or other in your life, you saw yourselves as victims of racism, poverty, bullying, discrimination, migration issues, or you associated with people who were affected by those issues. And I think that's what drives a lot of what you do today and what your approach is. So I understand that. And I will say, you may not believe me, but I share all those values, issues involving racism, poverty, bullying, discrimination, immigration, migration, that kind of thing. I think for the most part, I share your values, but I think the thing is that we're really a world apart in our experiences and how that's shaped us. And I'll give you some examples. The 5 of you who are here today, your work experience, for the most part, maybe not totally, for the most part, has been in the government and the nonprofit sector. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a fact. My work experience, on the other hand, has been almost totally in the private sector. So I think that explains why I come at some of these issues differently. Reaction to events. Gail talked about her experiences during Vietnam and sympathizing with protesters and that kind of thing. And I got to tell you, I never was, never have been a supporter of the war in Vietnam. And but I went there. I went there and did my job. And so, we've got, again, we're 180 degrees apart. Gail was a protester. I was a soldier. And, we bring that experience to what we're doing now. And Laura talked about compromise. I think she said something about that was one of the lessons she learned. I gotta say it. I guess I hope for the best, but I think trying to get this city council to actually work together is kind of a lost cause. Nat Bates didn't come today because that's essentially what he said. He said it was a waste of time. And I'm glad to come. I'm always glad to engage. I'm optimistic that something good will come out of this. But I think because of the vast difference in our life experiences and how we approach issues, I just don't think it's going to happen. I've got a year and 8 months left in my term, and I don't see any change. What we've got is we've got a majority of people on the city council who basically walk in lockstep. They're unwilling to compromise. They're mostly unwilling to even discuss compromise, and they just do what they do. And again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's kind of what Nat Bates said. He said, what's the point in coming and talking about it? They're gonna do what they're gonna do, and I can't do anything about it. And why bother? So I think the challenge we have.
Excuse me, point of order. I don't think it was fair of the mayor to put words into.
I said I didn't want to put words in his mouth.
And to interpret his intention when he said that.
Look, I'm just.
I've had conversations with Nat Bates, and I have a totally different viewpoint. It's not my place to explain Nat Bates' words.
That's all right. I'm gone.
Time out.
I'm gone. No.
Yeah. Melvin, you had your hand up. Was that just a stop or?
Yeah, look, can we people are going to say stuff that we disagree with all the time. Trust me, I woefully disagree with 90% of the things that happen at council during discussion. But we just got to let it go at some point, because if we try to check each other, it's checking our pride, and then just ends up exploding, and then the public has to deal with that, and it kind of detracts from the discussion that we had, to where, no, look, the mayor's gone. I almost pressed the leave button too. Can we get to a point where we're not cutting each other off? Just let somebody say what they're going to say, and we'll take our time to clarify what we believe the actual thing is and just move on. Otherwise, we're just arguing with each other, and it's not worth it.
Melvin, I think that's a great point, and I would like to move you on, because there are tools and techniques that council members can utilize and engage in that get you to those points and help you be efficient, and use of language that is collaborative rather than divisive. And I'd really like to encourage that we use this time to find productive ways of moving forward. It's really it's painful to watch folks challenge over language differences and perspective differences when it strikes me that you have so much in common and so many things that you could be doing together. Whether it's a majority decision or a consensus decision, there are still ways to do it politely, collaboratively, and respectfully. Eduardo, a few minutes only, and then let's move on. You're muted.
Yes, I wanted to apologize. I just now saw the raise hand option. So I didn't know that we had the, I couldn't see the ability for me to raise my hand. That's
Okay.
why I called for a point of order.
Okay.
So, you know, it's these perceptions that various people, you know, pronounce as truth that are objectionable and creates conflict. I mean, you know, for the mayor to say that we're not doing anything is a falsehood. I mean, we are getting a lot of things accomplished, maybe not the things that he wants, and because it's not the things that he wants, he thinks that nothing's being done. So you know, I recognize when things are done, whether they're things I want or whether they're things that I don't. So I think we all need to be mindful of the truth we're telling.
Yes. I'd like to talk just a little bit about some other ways that you could use what you know about each other and what experiences that other communities have dealt with. You are not the only council that has had these communications challenges and differences in attempting to move the council's agenda forward. And so I'd like you to, if you could just think a little bit about some of these questions. If you could recreate your council meetings, what would you do differently? How could things be different? And how would you like to streamline the process and procedural elements so you can focus on decisions and outcomes? One of the challenges that I noticed in watching your council meetings is it's clear that you get frustrated after a very long meeting, which is not at all uncommon. It is very challenging to do the people's work like this over such a long period of time. And so elements of how you can streamline these processes and procedures so that you can get to the decisions that you need to make policy-wise, so then you can turn them over to staff and get the work done. And then there are phrases and comments that you can use at meetings to get you to consensus votes and decisions. And there are phrases that that simply create divisiveness, don't allow communications to occur. And one thing that happens is that when those terms, those words, those phrases are used, people generally stop listening. And your job as 7 individuals representing this broad array of constituencies, you've all been elected to serve on this board, and part of the challenge of representative democracy is that you all have to act in a collective manner in order to get anything done, whether it's majority or consensus. So can you find ways to avoid the language that causes you conflict and use the language that creates consensus? And conciseness. It's helping each other summarize. What if we did this? Could we get to the point where we are making a decision? How shall we move forward? And focusing on those outcomes beyond a statement of position that may not change any minds among the others on the council. And then how could you communicate just say, for instance, that there's a difference between two council members and how you approach a problem. Is there a way that you could have a civil conversation with that one individual, not so much, not on the outcome, of course, because that's related to Brown Act, but the process of getting to the decision? Is there a way that you could one-on-one communicate and say, hey, you know, if we talked about it in this way, would it help? Is there anything that I can do to help you understand my position and you can tell me more about your position? And then before we get into that discussion, I had a bit of a framework because you do have rules that you have adopted. And they're from 2014, and you use them regularly at your council meetings. And I attached them to the memo just as a reminder, and I marked up a couple of areas that I thought might be worth talking about at the appropriate time. And I've also attached some samples from a couple of other jurisdictions. One's a small general law city that has contract city attorney services, just to give you an idea of what it would look like. It doesn't serve Richmond because you are a charter city with in-house legal counsel, but the language was interesting, and in its choice of the decorum and demeanor. And then the other was I'm sorry, my slide is incorrect here. It is the city of Sunnyvale's rules of conduct, and they adopt them annually each year. And Sunnyvale is certainly demographically different from Richmond. However, it is a charter city with an in-house legal counsel, and they have come up with a set of rules and procedures that might be worth looking at too, should you decide you want to do some revisions. And so my question to you is, from a broad perspective, I'm not asking you to go through all of these documents and highlight what's important to you and what's not, but in broad general terms, are you at all interested in looking at your rules and looking at doing some things differently? What are common themes? What would you like to keep? Are there things that you want to edit out or in? And I'd like to stop speaking now, and I'd be happy to hear comments from council members and or Laura and Teresa who might have some thoughts about this as well. Don't all speak up at once. Gail?
Yes, so what city is this resolution Exhibit A, example of another city's principles of operation? What city is that from?
It's the city that I used to work with, Larkspur, and again, it's a small general law city. And this was material that was handed to me when I walked in the door that said, this is what the council has written up about how they want to approach governing at the city council level.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not appropriate for us at all. The idea of, going through the city manager to talk with the city attorney does not fit because they're both at will employees, and we as a council should have equal access to our at will employees. And
Yes.
the idea of the press to have the city council delegate the city manager when, I don't think that's good for any city. I think it's the, elected officials option whether or not to talk with the press. And I don't think we should put it in the hand. I mean, the city manager, of course, can also talk with the press, and but
you know, we get called upon a lot by the press, and we should have every right to share. And the press expects it of us to share our perspective with them. Let's see, what other things? The council position on issues it's kind of confusing, number 5, where it says local, state, or regional issues. I think it might be more focused on state or federal issues, because I feel very strongly that it's up to us, and many cities, maybe smaller cities don't do it as much, but take positions on state laws, federal laws. And it's important because we can build commonality, and we can build a movement of cities on certain issues. Like we just passed a resolution in support of single payer, and that's very important to have many cities supported to make to really pressure the legislature to do something on that. So I mean, some of the things are okay, but some of them to me seem really inappropriate to have put the manager, or in some cases the mayor, in charge of certain things. It's not appropriate for us. We should have our autonomy as individual elected officials. I just want to say something about the previous conversation. I think it is important to share, to be in commonality when we can. And that's always been my approach. When we have issues in common, we should line up with one another. Like the mayor and I have various things that we aren't in common about, but there are some things that we share, some values, some issues that we'll line up together on, and we'll sometimes co-sponsor things. And that's been the history of my relationship with him. But that doesn't mean I should in any way change my perspective, just that's based on my principles, just to align with him. But I do hear what you're saying. It's always good to hear somebody's perspective. How can it be shared in a more gracious way? And I try to do that, and I certainly will continue to do so.
Yeah. And Gail, just a quick comment. I hear you. It's just, I put that in as just an example, and it doesn't have as much relevance to the city of Richmond because it's a different form of governance. Claudia.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that that resolution Exhibit A is not relevant for Richmond, because I have a lot of comments about how.
Yeah.
So it's not even kind of like a good example to put into this conversation.
All right. Very good.
Yeah, but I think like one thing that I think we forget about city council is that we are elected with different agendas, and we are here trying to move forward what we campaign for, what we were elected for, and also what is in our values. And it might be that in some ways is aligned with many, and in some ways not. But is in that position where we are going to be able to provide with information to see how we can shift some of our colleagues to support or not. So this is no, I think like what sometimes I get confused is that this is no a work like where we all get along because we have like, we decided to come to be in a workplace because I feel like I can be in a space where I can work with people around different issues. And here we are coming because it's not only us, is we are representing various communities who voted for us. Mm-hmm. And in my case in District 6, 54% of the community voted for me with the values and the ideas that I was bringing out.
Very good.
So, I think is I think two things. One is that we bring to the table with a lot of information. So we have debates with data, with information, so that we can get to pass. And I have experience with, like, for instance, the budget guiding principles that we work collectively, and we, at the end, we have almost everybody voting for it. So that it's not like that we don't have that experience here, but we know, and I think it's in every single government, that they are fundamental difference because our value systems, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And that is no the no compromise that we have. We have some values, but we agree that we are here to make sure that we support and move issues in a way that is going to support our community. And the other point that I want to make in terms of, like, what you say, like asking how you would like to see these the city council meeting, is that I go back to what one person made public comments, and it's more about how that the public gets involved in this, and it's difficult when it's just 2 minutes, when they ask questions and we cannot respond to them, right?
Right.
And so I think, like, ways to be able to address the public in ways that it doesn't take that much time, but also, like, that it could answer the question that the public has is very important as well.
Thank you. May I ask a question about, there was a little bit of comment about your no compromise on values decision. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, and I think it's not about what the outcome is, because you can compromise on the outcomes, right? It's like, it could be that you want 10 and then you get 8 or 5. Like, is that part that, yeah, is a negotiation. You bring that and that. But I think, like, in the values of, like, for instance, there's fundamentally difference about how we want economic development to be in the city, right? Fundamentally difference about housing issues.
Okay, got it.
So that is.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to, just hold these concepts about your rules as a framework for thinking about if you want to do something different. And in the meantime, I got about 10 minutes before we have scheduled a break, and I will check in with you about that. But in talking about the how the council communicates, there are some ways that you can think a little bit differently, or tilt your kaleidoscope a little bit differently about how you use language. And I'd just like to run down this list real quickly of productive communications tools that I've seen used in multiple jurisdictions that seem to help people not only achieve compromise and consensus, but also, when you're clearly divided, to do so respectfully and thoughtfully of each other's positions. And one is the use of positive language. It's the how shall we, or how will we do things together? What if we tried this? Language like yes and versus no but. And then common courtesy language, just the greetings, the pleases and thank yous. And I do hear that a lot from you. And it's a very positive way of interacting with each other, is just the common courtesy that we generate. Ways to build and encourage mutual respect and trust. It doesn't occur in a vacuum. one person has to have an interaction with another to build trust. So how do you do that when you think about wanting to trust your colleagues and your staff to carry out the work that's before you? How will you do that? And then each person needs to take personal responsibility for both the quality and the quantity of your discourse. How do you say things to express your position, knowing that you may not be persuading the other party, but you still have to come to decisions at the council level with 7 people. And then how much that you say gets you to where you want to go. An appreciative inquiry. When you ask questions, it's because you're curious, you want more information. I've seen some people use questions, and I'm sure you have too, to play gotcha or try to set someone up for an answer that they already want to hear. And that's not as powerful as asking a question because you're curious, because you want to know more and you want to learn something. Look for new information, different, fresh approaches. How can you do that? And I think that's where the what if language comes in, and how shall we? And then share your wisdom, lessons learned. You've done some of that already, and you can do that again. And lessons learned is different from telling a historical perspective from your standpoint. Everyone has history, and everybody's history is unique to yourself. But if you describe what lessons you learned from that history, rather than the history itself, it may help you get to outcomes and processes more quickly. And again, use your procedural structure. You have the rules and regulations that are in place. You might want to amend them. That's entirely up to you. But take a look at those rules again and make sure that you're using all the elements that allow you to keep your meetings focused on outcomes and expedient and productive. And that focus on outcomes is particularly critical. Where do you want to get to? You've got items on your agenda that are routine, and some are really unique to Richmond. It's on the agenda for a reason, and that is generally because you want to get something done about it. So how can you get there focusing on that first and foremost? And you've talked a bit about the agreement to disagree already. Agree on what you can, disagree on the rest, then make decisions and move on to the next issues. It's I've heard a certain amount of basically interaction between council members that is not quite as productive and focused on the outcome. And so if you disagree, summarize your thoughts and say, this person and I may disagree on this matter. That's okay. Here's my position. Can we call a vote? Can we move forward? And then, as always, consider your impact individually. Everyone is watching you. We're watching each other. When you say and do things, when facial expressions don't reflect what you want to convey about the outcomes and the decisions, I'd encourage you to think about that throughout the meeting. Use your time well. Use your position well. And you all are strong, powerful, talented people with great public service orientation. And I hope that you find some of this helpful. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. And then we've got a little short break scheduled at 2:30. Gail, is your hand up new, or is that left over?
Sorry, that's left over.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts about ways to interact and speak differently that can help you get where you want to go? You can do it. I know. Yeah. Go ahead. Melvin first and then Gail.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to really answer that question when we don't have the full council here to like make these agreements or be a part of the discussion. So it's hard for me not to feel like we can agree right here, but our foundation isn't going to be as strong enough whenever we leave because we don't have the whole team here. That being said, I mean, I just suggest all of us just to keep our pride in check, think about what our goal is and the best way to speak or approach that goal that will actually get there versus burning all the bridges on the planet because we're pissed off at each other. So just keeping our pride in check and trying to be respectful, even if you want to cuss the person that you're talking to out, just filter that into something sweet and kind and call for the vote like Jean suggested.
Thank you, Melvin. Any other thoughts?
I think I was just going to say that we're not all going to be on the same team. And that's the reality. You know, I remember when I first became mayor in 2007, when I was sworn in 2007, that year, some real big conflicts came up and the city manager, Bill Lindsay at the time, said, well, maybe you should talk to the others, or maybe you should, you know, and I said, listen, I have tried over the past years, and it's not going to happen. And he got it. He said, I understand you, it's a team. And it was the majority because I was in the minority at that time. And he said, that's a team, that majority is a team you don't want to be on. And he respected that. And so I hope that the staff respects us, that we're on, you know, and we don't always agree among the progressives on the council that, you know, self-described progressives majority there. I think there are some progressive aspects of others as well, whether they call themselves a progressive or not, I don't know. But one thing that I do know is that his recognition of that meant a lot to me, because it said, okay, your values are dominating how you project yourself into this role as mayor or as a council member. And so it really helped our relationship a lot, I think, once he said that. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think Claudia made some comments about we were elected for a certain agenda, an agenda that we hold inside of us in terms of our values. We shared it during the campaign. And people it resonated with people. They elected us based on our ideas and values. And to say, so the compromise aspect is kind of difficult. You can compromise on certain minor things, but to turn around your agenda for the sake of now being part of this new club, you know, I always would say that. People sometimes get elected and they say, now I'm with the club of elected officials. Many of us don't feel that way. We're elected. Yes, we are an elected official, but our club, if you will, is the public that elected us, is the constituency. And we want to reach out more to the public, even those who didn't vote for us, because we do recognize that we represent the public at large. So, but it's not going to happen. I think your thoughts, Jean, with these communication tools are very, very good. We should be respectful. There's different ways that things could be said. But I just want to put that out there, that we're not going to be on the same team, but we could be a respectful council and still stand for what we were elected for and what we hold in our hearts.
Very nicely said, Gail. And yes, council members must vote their conscience and how you wish to go forward. There are simply ways in which you can get there through either collaboration or vote. And in many cases, if there isn't compromise, then you simply vote and take action and go forward with the majority. So Eduardo and then Claudia, and then I just want to check in with you about taking a break. So and just to stretch for a minute or two and then come back and we can continue the discussion. Eduardo and then Claudia.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to be respectful. I try to be respectful, and when I fail, I'm sorry, and I'm trying my best. But a lot of times it seems like we're talking sideways to each other. I mean, Melvin, I consider a strong ally. I respect him, but when he mentioned, keeping our pride in check, that meant nothing to me. I mean, in terms of what's going on in my psyche, so that might mean something to him, it might mean something to other people, but to me it means nothing. And so I guess my job is to try to find an equivalent of what it is that's making me speak out when I shouldn't, when I don't have the floor. And I think for me it's speaking truth to power. I mean, trying to be honest. And when I feel that people are gilding the lily or twisting things to make a point, it's difficult for me to not speak out. And I guess that's what I need to work on.
Well, thank you, Eduardo. And yeah, speaking out is, I've never worked with a council that was reluctant to speak out. So let's not, you're not going to go there. It's the kind of taking a deep breath and reminding yourself where you want to get to and how does this help? So, and Claudia, do you have a few comments to make?
Yeah, a few comments so we can get to the break. I think use positive language, all these communication tools are really important. And I think we should be exercising more of that. But it's different in terms of really be passionate about an issue and really get to that point, not only with the city council, but with the communication with the public. And I think what I feel right now with this conversation is also that we are doing this conversation in a vacuum. We are not bringing the whole history of Richmond, the whole history of big entities and big corporations, the power dynamics that are here, and that the election, the result of this election particularly, and we had that experience before, is that people had been coming out to support the ones who are standing against that power dynamic. And the reality is that we are here to really combat that power dynamic that has been in the mix of Richmond politics for many, many years. Mm-hmm. So for me to have this conversation without all of that history is also pointless in some ways. I respect and I agree, in sense, it's we need to have better communication. We need to have better tools to come out with a more a better way of handling the business of in the city council. I agree with that, but at the same time, I agree with Gail McLaughlin in terms of the reality is that we are not going to be on this. We are not. It's politically we are not aligned with some of our city council members, even though we can say there is a majority progressive in this. So I think it's how we work together with the majority also to really come to bring policies that are at the end going to improve the life of all residents in Richmond.
Great. Thank you. And just a brief bit of background. The intent is in having this conversation about communications and relations is to build the underlying structure for the time that you can talk about your priorities and your goals and objectives on the community issues. Many of you identified your thoughts about what your priorities are, and we're going to wrap up with that. And if you want to continue a discussion about that at another meeting farther down the line, we're welcome to do so. This is an opportunity to see if there are ways that we can help you and you can help yourselves find the right language to get you so that when you do talk about the priorities and the community needs, you're doing so in ways that are productive throughout for yourselves, for your staff, and the community. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about some staff requests about communications and working together. And one of the things that I mentioned early on was the building an encouragement of mutual respect and trust. And that's an issue that the staff would really like to talk about further too. How can we build a good sense among the council and staff that you've got a team to go forward to make things happen in Richmond? And so with that, I'd like to suggest that we all take a few minutes and stretch. If we can come back in about 10 minutes, which would, by my clock, is showing about 2:48 or so. Oh, heck, I'll give you an extra 2 minutes. How about 2:50? If you'll come back at 2:50, then we'll get started again and address the remaining issues that were outlined in the memo. Thank you. Hi all, welcome back.
I'm here, Jean, but I'm muted.
Okay, got it. And Melvin will be right back.
Johnson is here.
Great, thank you.
Teresa's here as well.
Great, Teresa, thank you. Great, I see Gail. Thank you for coming back. Are there?
Yeah, and if any other council members have rejoined, if you could let us know or turn your camera on, that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Here's Melvin. Hi, Melvin.
And we know Councilmember Johnson let us know he was here. Councilmember Martinez or Jimenez, Mayor Butt.
Why don't we give it just a minute or two more and and then we'll continue the conversation. Oh. Claudia, thank you. You must have stepped out to speak with someone, Eduardo. Okay, very good. Well, let's go ahead and get started again. Where we left it before the break was a list of, I put together a list of council requests and I'm sorry, staff requests of council, and I'll put them up on the screen in just a moment. But I do want to continue the discussion of mutual trust, and probably the overriding set of comments that I heard from staff and is the desire to work with council to implement council's actions based on the actions that you take, of course, and then how to build communications and the mutual respect and trust so that the council work, which is a neutral platform from which the work of the council gets done. You give direction, policy direction, council takes it, staff takes it, and then wants to create the implementation plan and sometimes that includes alternatives and options for you to consider to meet your goals going forward. So how does staff build trust with you, and how do you build trust with them about moving forward? What gets in the way? What builds it? How can you and staff feel a strong partnership about the moving forward for the city of Richmond? And I'd be very interested in hearing council's comments on that, and I'll be bringing up the screen share in just a moment. Melvin? I see you pondering.
It's just a very, very broad question you asked there.
It is.
My response isn't going to be perfect. It's because, you know, just being here one term and being able to talk to staff and fellow council members and just having my own personal evaluation, which is flawed. It's just my impressions and I'm willing to learn from them. But there's like staff I do trust, and then staff sometimes where it does feel like there's an ulterior motive, especially in some of the phone calls I get. And most of the time I'm sitting there listening. And I feel like there's a lot of there. I don't know if it still exists, but especially last year, it seemed like there were a lot of factions on staff that just kind of created internally. It seemed like there was a breakdown in communication to where, honestly, if someone were to ask me how I describe City Hall, I'm like, there's the city council members and their individual perspectives. There's their mayor and his staff and that individual, whatever happens there. And then there's what's happening in City Hall. I can't tell you how many gossips, rumors, and all kinds of things that shouldn't be happening that I've heard about, and then things that, you know, have come to light publicly over time. So all that's to say is there was like already a breakdown in trust, and it's hard to really repair that unless we're all willing to be integral and objective whenever we're approaching each other about these issues. Yeah, it's kind of hard to get there because everybody has an individual perspective and they kind of identified their antagonist with whoever they're talking about. So I really don't know. I just try to like hear what answers I need to hear and see if it seems like well-intentioned answers, or if it seems like I'm not getting the full story, which sometimes you do hear that every now and then, or I've heard that every now and then over the years where I get a portion, but not the full story. And I have felt like I've been worked by staff, but not all of them, just occasionally here and there. So I say all that's to say is because I've experienced that, I have heard my other colleagues say it with more emphasis than me, and it makes it hard to really trust other city staff members when it feels like somebody else has already worked you. So it's like, can I trust anybody else's advice? That was a mess of all I said, but I say that because the whole situation is a mess.
Yeah.
And I'm only trying to describe like my personal perception.
Yeah. I guess one of the underpinnings is part of what I heard you say, which was about intent and the good intent of staff and the good intent of council on the policy side and staff on the implementation side. And how do we get to the point where we're starting off recognizing that everyone's intentions are good going forward? And yeah, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be misstatements on occasion, but how to deal with them. And so if others on the council have some comments and some ideas about how things could be different, we'd really like to hear them. Laura, Teresa, and the members of the staff that are with us today. Any thoughts that you can share? Gail?
Actually, I think I see Eduardo's hand up. Was that before me? Maybe.
Go ahead, Gail. That's okay.
Okay. So one of the things that would help me have more trust is a tough thing because, you know, I come from a position, I think, of being a very trusting person, and I've been burned. I've been burned heavily in the past, and not by anybody here. It's in the past, and it has. I still hold my belief in humanity, and you know, even though I've been burned, and
what would help me is if staff would actually tell us how they are getting us to the goals we want, which we've expressed. Where I see a lot of no's coming, like, no, you can't do this. This is, I mean, every item I have put on practically has been stopped in one way or another. And I have adhered to that and worked with staff and sometimes come through with another version. But, and this goes for closed session, which I'm not going to discuss the substance of closed session right now, but it goes for closed session as well, that when the council majority, when the majority or the supermajority or the whole council sets out a direction or what we want to happen or where we want to get to, and we instead are told what we can't do rather than how we can get to where we want to go. The focus that I see is on what we can't do, rather, or what we have to do, which is out of sync with what you want us to do. And what we want you to do is being left hanging or not moved as fast as we think it needs to happen. So I think it's a question of focus rather than focusing on, I mean, there isn't enough focus on what we want to happen sometimes. If I felt there was more focus coming forth on what we want to happen, ideas, incremental progress. I mean, not that some progress isn't happening on some issues I'm thinking of in my head, but some of these things that I'm concerned about are really important that they move fast in terms of our desired outcome for various reasons, that they could be stopped if we leave the current direction going. So I guess I would like to see the focus put on what we want and not so much focus on what staff thinks we have to do. If we did what we want, maybe those other things wouldn't be so much of a problem. If the focus was on what we want, maybe maybe some staff are getting what I'm trying to say, but I can't go into detail because of closed session. But it's just to put it in one sentence. If the focus could just be put on getting us where we want to go as quickly as possible, it would mean so much to me, to the public who are also on board some of these issues, not closed session, but the broader issue, and the council majority. And, maybe some of the others on the council would appreciate seeing what could happen as we get closer to that outcome as well.
Okay. Very good. Good comments. Thank you. Eduardo, your hand is up, and unmute, please.
Yes, I'm so used to talking to myself.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. I think this issue of trust is a historical issue, and it comes from our former city manager, Bill Lindsay. And I want to preface everything that I'm saying as my perception. So I do not believe that Bill Lindsay held his managers accountable. And there was a lot of issues that arose from the fact that he does not hold his managers accountable. And one of the major fractures was that I feel that staff under managers created their fiefdoms or areas that they controlled, and they wanted to keep control of that area because, that's who they were. That's how they identified themselves. And so we have a new city manager who steps into a situation where she doesn't know the players, she doesn't know the situation. She comes in blind. She doesn't know who to trust, who not to trust. And, you know, like a good manager, she trusts everyone until they prove themselves not trustworthy. As a council member, I've experienced City Hall the way that Roshaman experienced, or rather the way what Roshaman is told, you know, which is the same story told from different perspectives. So I've heard things that happen at City Hall from different players and therefore different perspectives. And my job as the reader is to find out what really happened, you know. And so, you know, because the stories vary so much, and because in one story someone's a protagonist, and in another story he's the antagonist, and you know, and the roles of responsibility or changes so much, it's difficult for me to trust anyone. You know, because I don't know. You know, I kind of feel like I'm in the same position that the city manager is in, you know, because of the stories that I hear. I'm not sure who is the protagonist and who is the antagonist. And so language is very important to me. And I listen to the words that people use, and I try to discern the intent behind the words that they choose. And sometimes I think people unknowingly show their bias or show their intent, you know, through language. And I also am aware that my interpretation could be faulty. So you know, I think what we need is time, and we need a focus. We need clarity. The mayor at one of the meetings said that that a problem he had was incomplete agenda reports. You know, he said that there wasn't enough detail, there wasn't enough clarity, and I have to agree with him. You know, there's a lot of information that would help us be more efficient in our decision making. You know, and I think a lot of times the questions that we ask are questions that arise because the information isn't there. So, and then this goes back to the trust issue. You know, was that information left out because there's a motive behind it? Was it left out from incompetence, or was it left out because, you know, it wasn't seen as germane to the issue? You know, so you know, constantly questions, and the answers that we put to those questions, you know, determines whether or not we trust or don't trust.
Sorry, my fault. A very interesting range of comments, and rational from, you know, both your internal perspective and what you see outside, recognizing that you may read it in a different way than it was intended, and that's not at all uncommon. And coming up with those perspectives is really healthy. Claudia, would you like to share your thoughts on trust with staff?
Yeah, I think I had been asking for a lot of information, and I had gotten some, and I just wanted to say thank you to the staff for getting back to me with information. I think one thing that will create trust is that to not feel that we are here asking all these questions because we want to kind of like point the bad person. I think it's more about that we are here to make decisions. And for me, particularly, I want to make decision with a lot of information. And because at the end of the day, we are the ones who say yes, no, or abstained, and having the right information without kind of like different answers to the same question. So I know that is a challenge, but I think that is how I feel like we can trust and I just wanted to say, like, where I am coming from to ask questions to us is not about the lack of trust on each of the staff or just looking to the bad. It's more about me getting the information that I need to really understand what the topic is and how that is going to have more information so I can be informed about what decisions I am making around particular issues. So I just wanted to say that I will be asking many other questions, many requests for data because this is the way that I think like I can be sitting with all of you and be informed. So it's not a conversation in the cloud, but it's grounded in the reality, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I think is around also respect. We know that there will be some ways in maybe the city also staff don't agree with some items that I am going to put or some things, but I had been showing in the work how I can collaborate. And one example is the budget guiding principles. I led the full staff to present what they were concerned about, talking to the city attorney, and at the end put together something that it was more or less in terms of like legality well done. And I know that maybe there are some different things that the city staff maybe disagree, but I think it's more about how we feel they are supporting us. And I know also that is we need to also have some parameters about how much is one city council to direct staff, which is like trying to make sure that is a decision that whole city council is directing staff. But at the same time, it's like when we do that, we would like to see the results. So, for instance, the just transition, we did the city staff to do it, and I know that because staff issues, I don't know what they have been doing. So just kind of like showing some progress, even though sometimes it's just difficult because it's staffing or because there are other things that they are working ahead, but that it could like how that is taken into account and not just as letting us feel like that even if we do, even if there is some direction that nothing is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Thank you, Claudia, for your comments. Demolis or Tom, would you like to say anything at this point regarding trust with building trust, maintaining trust, creating trust with staff? Seems quiet.
Are either of them here? I don't know.
I see I see their logos on the screen, so.
Yeah, I thought Tom left, but apparently
Yeah.
his logo, I keep muting and unmuting. Okay, I'm just gonna say I see two logos, but I don't see any of their faces, and I don't know what that means. Okay.
Okay, well, I thought I'd ask and see if there's any comment. Staff, I spent some time with staff, the management team, talking in broad terms about what they would like to see done differently too. And I don't want to take the time to go through every detail here on this list, but a lot of it is around what you've already talked about, which is how do we build trust with you? There are a number of new staff members, for instance, that started after Laura was appointed, and so she's attempting to build a team to meet your needs and bring skills and abilities to get you to the points where you want to go. So there's history, yes, but there's the future going forward, and the folks that are going forward want to have a better understanding of what they can do to help you get where you want to go. And so your comments that Gail's, Claudia's, Eduardo's, and Melvin's comments are very much appreciated. They also, there was a lot of, there was comment about using the structures that you have in place, like the council manager form of government for keeping track of items and issues, and to allow adequate time to address issues raised by council. And then one question to all of you and to staff as well, are there mechanisms that the city of Richmond uses to report back periodically on the status of actions taken? In other words, like a quarterly report, for instance, that says, here's what council directed on this date and time, this is the status of it, this is where it is, it's done. We need additional staff work to help with that, for instance. So are those, is some strategy or system like that in place, and would it be helpful? And also recognizing that there are routine things that the city of Richmond must do on contracts, for instance, or adopting your budget. There are certain timelines there that have to get done too, and those need to be rolled into the workload factor. So a quick question for you is any structure in place for reporting back? And Laura, you might have some thoughts about that. And then I see Eduardo's hand up.
So when I first arrived, the council had a retreat to come up with some priorities, and we were reporting back, I was trying to get in the cycle of regular reporting back, and the council now, I think it would be very helpful if we got back to that. There isn't a very clear way of reporting back at this point. And so it'd be great to have some input on what that might look like. And we also could use, some formal priorities with agreed upon projects so that we can, from a time management standpoint, get that focus and clarity to keep things moving forward that folks are so desirous of.
Eduardo?
Yes. In conversations with the city manager, I expressed dismay at not having a timeline of everything that the city is doing. Kind of like what an architect or what a developer would have, with the different teams and their responsibilities and the timelines, and so for instance, we passed initiatives, or we pass things for staff to do, and because we don't have that, we as a council have no idea what staff is doing, And we have no idea what staff should be doing and isn't doing until the time, comes to pass, and there's several times where as the council, we have to remind staff, we were supposed to do this by this time and it's already passed. So I think what we don't have and need to have is a chart, with a timeline and things that need to happen along that timeline, the way we do with developments, but with everything that the city council does, so that we're all aware of what's being done.
Okay, that seems to make sense, and I think it's tied to two things: is priority and time, and rolling the new items in with the mandated and required items, and then what's the status of the previous items, and what does it all look like when staff is designing your agendas going forward, which brings me to one question I have that came up with staff, and I have for you. You have a process where council members can initiate an item for the agenda on the Wednesday before the Tuesday meeting. And there's no interest and no desire on staff's part, and certainly not on council's part, to change that practice. However, is there any way that a few extra days could be added to that process to give staff a little bit more time to take a look at that item and provide you with the baseline information about what it means in terms of getting the work done? And I see Gail's hand and I see Melvin's hand. Gail, go ahead. And then-
Yes, thank you. I actually have the opposite request. I request that we get till Wednesday, 5 p.m. to put items on the agenda. And let me share with you why. First of all, staff can make all the changes in its items up until the very minute that the agenda goes out. And I'm talking about high level staff. I realize that departments have deadlines that are longer, or that go days before or weeks before the agenda comes out. But the problem with yes, I always try to and will continue to try to get items that I want on the agenda into Trina's hands as early as possible. And I always make sure my agenda reports are totally written, my resolutions are totally written, make it as easy as possible on her. Sometimes, I'll ask for her to do a little work and she does some proofing and does a great job. But the thing about us having, and this has been a long time discussion, we often have things come up at a council meeting that require us to, just on the spot, think about putting something on the agenda for the very next week. And so what happens is we have till noon on Wednesday. So here we are at a council meeting on Tuesday, and it might run till 11:30, 12 o'clock. By the way, we used to have meetings run till 1 or 2 p.m. I'm not suggesting that we have those long meetings again, but it's not, and other city councils, cities of our size have long meetings as well. But, let's try and keep them short. I'm all for that. But when they do run long, we go to bed, sometimes we take time to unwind after a stressful meeting, and we, have to get up, and some people go to work, of course, which is have a full-time job, which is also an added stressor about getting it in at 12 p.m. on Wednesday. But even if you do have Wednesday morning available, you're having to, do a lot of work and getting it in the right form, and sometimes research has to happen and get your item in. So I was going to ask if we could push that deadline to 5 p.m. on Wednesday. I realize staff needs time. And I know the city attorney, the city manager, the city clerk, finance department, all review these things. And that review process happens, but they still will have time. I mean, it's not like council items are the majority of the items on the agenda. The majority of the items are staff items. Maybe we'll have 3, 4, sometimes 1, 2 council items, maybe 5 at most. I don't even remember us having 5, but maybe. But staff can review all the staff items first and then come to ours. And I do realize that what has happened with this particular staff, because I have that experience of being on the council for nearly 13 years in the past, and I have not been stopped as frequently. I mean, yes, there have been times when the city attorney has said, well, wait a minute, you should tweak this or that, or the city manager has said, oh, this is a problem, and here is the reason, and they've helped to work it out better. But they managed to do it, with that 12, noon deadline. And I could say that they are working on it sometimes on Thursdays and getting it out by, 5 p.m. on Thursday, or sometimes the agenda seems to come out on Friday. And I don't know why, because I think it might be because of some staff items sometimes need more tweaking. So I'm not into having our hands being tied in terms of giving more notice, because again, things come up in a very quick and timely way. I would ask that we get till 5 p.m. on Wednesdays. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Gail, for your comments. I see Claudia's hand up. Is there someone that wished to speak before Claudia? I'm sorry, I'm losing track.
Melvin had.
Okay. Claudia, why don't you go ahead?
No, let Melvin go ahead because he
Okay.
raised his hand first.
Okay, Melvin, if you would.
Yeah, I agree that we all need to take responsibility and definitely give staff more time to review some of the items we put up there. And I know on some items I co-sponsored with Gail already, we talked about it and we did do the meetings that we needed to ahead of time. I know that doesn't happen all the time, but that did seem like appropriate and the ideal way to go about it. However, I do get very concerned about any recommendation from staff to limit council's abilities to put items on the agenda, because it reminds me of other jurisdictions I talked to where it was really city manager ran and council members even got intimidated by their own managers. Not saying it's about ours, but just in general. Council members got intimidated by their managers or scolded by city managers about putting items on the agenda if it represents some sort of value of importance to the wider community. And I don't want to even set the precedent here in Richmond that that's the track we want to get on.
Mm-hmm.
And not saying that that's going to happen with our current staff, but I know that we're not going to be the permanent board that sits here. There's going to be transitions, and the foundation we set for the future council will shape how decisions get made, and allowing a blockage or a limitation on how council can put items on the agenda doesn't set a good precedent to me, but I do believe there does need more be responsibility on our end to give more time to the limited capacity that our staff has. And we need to keep that conversation going and find a mechanism to talk about it if it seems like we're not giving staff more time, and agreements on both parties on the best way to move forward.
Very good. Good comments. Thank you. Claudia, if you could give us your wisdom and share your thoughts.
Yeah, I think there was something around like city council should not micromanage the staff, and staff should not micromanage city council, and allow us to do what we are elected here to do, which is the one thing that we have is to move policies, and the way that we do it is through putting on the agenda. I understand the need to work things out with the staff, with the city attorney, so that we know that we are in the right track about being in compliance with the charter, in compliance with law, that all things are happening. But I think I will ask, as the staff is asking us to look, like, we understand where they are coming because there are some staffing issues, that they also understand us and respect us in that way. The form of government that we have is a CEO that gets well paid, right? And a government that is basically in a volunteer basis. We it's not that I am implying anything, but just kind of like for the public to know, we had to work to make our living, and we are doing this public service as well without that much support. Like I understand it's Trina for all, like 6 city council, right? And we need also, we need to make sure that Trina doesn't get all the work at the same time. And even like Trina has done an amazing job with me as a new city council to support me. And then when we had to make big decisions that we don't know how they are going to play out with items in the city council. And I, like as Gail said, the majority of the items put in the agenda are from the staff, because they work full time there, so they know what is, like, they know what is coming up in the pipeline, and they are putting it. For us, it gets out sometime on Thursdays, but sometime on Friday. And we had to make decisions, and both yes, no, abstain about big issues with that time to review. And sometimes it's weekend, so we cannot kind of like get staff to give out more information. So I will really appreciate the thinking about how staff see in us as also as a collaborative body that is not just going to rubber stamp what they are doing, but that at the end of the day, we are the ones elected to move forward policies and to give direction to them. So how that collaboration is in a way that we feel we respect them and we feel they respect us. And the respect is not about disagree or not, but it's just like having the right information at the right time, so that we had the full information. And I know that sometimes they had to work until the last minute to put things there, but things that, like, at least that things that are going to be presented, they recognize, oh, we don't get these 2 documents or these 2 slides that we are going to present because we work until the last minute, but at least to kind of like email out to the city council with the recognition and sorry, we like, because we understand that, but is both ways. Is from us. I agree. Like sometimes I try to say like, this is my idea. What do you think? But I don't get a full answer. And maybe it's because staff is busy, so I understand that. But that I feel like that doesn't mean that I am not going to put it out as an item, because this is the right that I have as a city council, and this is the commitment that I have with my the resident of Richmond.
Okay. Well, it's clearly that there are opportunities on both sides to work together, staff and and council to get the items before you and then do the follow-up, in essence, close the loop in the discussion areas, so that when things go on the agenda, decisions are made, then you know what happens next. And it sounds like council recognizes that that timing is also important. Timing is important from a policy standpoint and the issue going forward. And then timing is also important from a staff perspective to make sure that they can get it on the agenda, appropriately noticed, and make sure that it doesn't have the conflicts with charter and or previous actions or direction of council or the law itself. And so it strikes me that there might be some ways in which, if council decided that this is an area that they wanted to work on with staff, that some smaller changes could be made that might be more helpful. And so with that, I see Teresa came on. Teresa, did you have something that you'd like to say at this point? And Pamela, how about you?
So Pamela was first, so I'm going to go ahead and let her go first, but
Okay.
sure, I would love to follow up.
Okay.
I just wanted to give an overview of the process. Is that okay?
Sure.
The agenda. Okay, so staff is required to submit an RLO, a request for legal opinion, on their items before they're put on the agenda. So they are put on the agenda after legal review, and that is 14 days before the agenda is submitted. So in that first week, they put a title. Second week, they have to have all their documents, and then it goes through a process. The process is the department head, which should have already looked at the documents before they were loaded into SIRE. And then it goes to finance. Finance is going to determine if the money is there, if there's a contract, or any other financial issues that may, affect the item. The next review is legal, and legal is going to review to see that the item was previously reviewed in their department before it is moved on. And after legal reviews, then it goes to Laura, city manager, for review, and then it comes to me. So on Wednesday, before the council meeting, we have agenda review. Okay, so first we have a draft agenda, and that goes to all the department heads. Then at 2 o'clock, we have a review with the mayor and his staff, and legal, Laura, and the city council office. So if we push back to 5 o'clock, then we're looking at possibly doing a agenda review on a Thursday, the same day the agenda needs to be published. So I just wanted to give you a perspective of how that's going to affect everything that the council has previously approved for the agenda to be published on a Thursday. Those are just my thoughts.
In terms of the council item, in terms of the council items that are placed just before the Wednesday deadline at noon, and I will say there are some council members who sometimes will send things well in advance and ask for us to take a look at it. And when I say us, that would mean either the city attorney's office, or sometimes it would be certain departments to take a look and provide input. And by doing that, it allows us to really take a look and see if there are big legal problems or areas where there really does need to be a much deeper dive. It also allows staff to help provide context and framework, and also discuss implications on staff, impact on operations, sometimes perhaps unintended consequences, perhaps those consequences are intended, but at least it allows there to be a discussion about how the proposed item, whatever it might be, would impact operations and staff, and also the extent to which it fits in with other provisions of the municipal code or resolutions that have already been passed. Sometimes the items that come forward are fairly straightforward and don't really require much by way of staff. I can tell you that I do try to look at them as quickly as they come in, but sometimes as quickly as I can look at them may not be until very late in the day on Wednesday, sometimes not even until very late Wednesday evening, in order to, because of other meetings or other deadlines that I have that I can't just let go. And so at that point, the legal review really is a very cursory one. And with some items that works. And sometimes there's just maybe a tweak that will get made. But sometimes there needs to be a really broader conversation. And then staff has to try to contact the council member. And all of you, of course, have very busy schedules, which is totally understandable. And so it becomes a little bit of a difficult race sometimes to try to find a time to speak with a council member and walk through any staff concerns. And so what staff is really proposing is if we could back up that date a little bit. Again, it wouldn't be removing the ability for council members to put something on the agenda, but to back it up a couple of days at least so that it isn't such a difficulty trying to get the item reviewed and then get in contact with the council member or the council members who then are putting the item on the agenda. I know that the clerk's office tries to push out, and since I have been here since early November, I think all but once or twice has pushed out the agenda on the regular agenda on Thursday, which means really that all of the moving parts need to have been to stop moving by sometime fairly early on Thursday morning. And so it becomes very difficult. And oftentimes the reason that the agenda is not getting pushed out at the usual time on Thursday is oftentimes because of a last minute item that has been put on by a council member where we are continuing to have a conversation. Occasionally there is a staff created item, but that is really the exception rather than the rule. And I don't know if Laura has anything more that she wants to add to that.
Sure, thank you. So just to repeat one particular component, the majority of the items that come to the council on the agenda have actually been in the process for several months. So there is a lot of work at the department levels. Often there's for instance, there might be a bid process, there's a purchasing process, or there is a lot of coordination with the council appointed boards, committees, and commissions trying to work through an item. There is a lot of thought and analysis that goes into these items, again, for several months. And again, as you heard the clerk say, even when we're starting to formally get to the point where it will go to the city council for a decision, they have to have already have all of their documents and materials ready and to get legal review before we even start that 3-week clock or 2.5-week clock that requires an item to be, sort of announced in the title, and then all the documents come in over the next several days and that kind of thing. So we internally have, with just the packet creation process, a 2.5 to 3-week process that really begins many months before on most items. Additionally, I hear this concept about staff items, but just as a reminder, the staff items are providing the services that you all have requested and authorized, and are to be implementing, your agenda and your priorities. So we're not, generally speaking, kind of coming up with random things that we think are important. These are about how to continue to provide the services that you all have authorized. We also have, as there's more items here in Richmond that come to the council than in many cities because of some of the provisions in the charter. So that does create a lot of extra staff work and extra review that we don't have everywhere. So wanted to clarify that. And I also want to just reiterate kind of what happens at that last minute. I've heard some concern today, which I fully understand, about not wanting to hear no, wanting to be able to move forward and say, well, how can we? And I am working within an organization that for the most part is very stressed out. And every time we add a whole new level of work, we don't have staff capacity to just keep adding things. So that is where I'm hoping, following this discussion, we will get to a point where we have a clear work program from the council that has those clear priorities and has clear projects, so that when you all want to add something new to that body of work, we can figure out either how to get the resources to do that, because that's going to involve people at some level. So how do we get the resources to add something? Or what is it that we can trade off and we can maybe not focus as much, or we can delay something else in order to add something new? It is becoming a significant issue in terms of how do we keep things moving forward? How do we show progress when people are feeling stressed that we are just adding and not accounting for, especially with frozen positions and all kinds of other things, the current body of work that we are trying to commit to.
All this is very helpful. And Gail, you either have your hand still up and your hand arose again. If you'd like to do a wrap-up comment,
Yeah.
then I need to check in on time and next steps.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I just wanted to say is I do understand staff's issues and the needs and all that. And I will always, and I make it to always try and get staff information as early as possible. And I have done that on certain things like a resolution, an ordinance in the past. And recently there was another ordinance that staff asked for, instead of putting the ordinance forward, do a direction to staff to come up with it. And that was fine. I did that. But there are other, I guess is what I'm saying is I will always try to get it as soon as possible, but I'm not willing to say that things won't come up, or maybe there is an issue that has been long-standing and it's time for it to move forward, and I'm going to modify it to address some of staff's issues at the last minute so it can go forward. So I can live with the 12 noon deadline, but I'm not willing to move it up a few days earlier, because I'll tell you the reason it came up in the past this way is because there were issues. There were conflicts on the council, or there were conflicts between staff and the council, or the public was raising this issue. When are you going to do this? And it was a need for council members who were being responsive to our agenda, in my case, and others on the council now, progressive agenda, or that to serve the community, or I should put it this way, our efforts and our commitment and our obligation to live up to what we were elected to do, to sometimes move issues in a very quick way. And so that 12 noon deadline is something that I can live with, but I'm not willing to back it up further, because that will only limit us, tie our hands when these difficult, timely, and things that I feel I'm obligated to move forward when they do come up, even at a last minute. That will limit my ability to do that, and others' ability to do that as well. But I promise, try always. I mean, right now I have something that is sitting that never made it to the agenda that was a month ago I brought out, and I was told something else was going to move forward, and then there got a barrier on what was moving forward on that. And then I'm thinking, okay, I got to go back with this resolution, and now there's problems with that. So now it's not even on the agenda. So it's not like, I mean, I think I'm ending up being the one who's being stopped because of staff's time frame issues. And I understand them, but I don't believe that there is a willingness sometimes on staff's part to understand, to maybe just sit down and say, okay, I get what you're saying. How about if we take this out and take that out? What do you think about this? I mean, I'm not getting that. It's more like, you know, this has this problem, that problem, this problem, that, and problems that don't seem like problems, that were never the intent of the resolution. I mean, it seems like things are being brought up just to make it even more difficult, or more making it seem like the direction to staff was more complex than it really was. But in any ways, I understand there's communication issues, but there also may be some resistance on staff's part. I don't know. That goes back to the trust thing. I don't think we're there yet. I'm open to it. I want to trust that staff is going to move the goals of the city council when we have a vote to do this or do that, but I'm not quite there yet. So if you could just understand where we're coming from, let's leave it as it is, 12 noon. Let's all do better. Let's try and get it there earlier when we can. When we can't, please try and work with us. I will try harder to be available if there needs to be a dialogue. But going to take away more from us is not something I can live with.
Okay, Gail, thank you so much for your comments and summarizing your position on this. And I'd just like to let you know that we had hoped to spend about 3 hours this afternoon, which is a tremendous commitment on the part of council. We have 9 minutes left, and I really would prefer not to keep you beyond 4 o'clock or much beyond 4 o'clock, because I know you have lives and staff and the members of the public who have committed to listen in on this meeting all have other things to do on a Saturday. So I'd like to get you to kind of wrap up, which is, what would you like to do differently? And I don't need an answer to this question today. So I would like to frame the topic. Are there things you would like to do differently? And if so, what are they? And how would you like to go about moving forward? And I do have a suggestion. One of the things that I can do is prepare a summary report of what I have heard today and provide it to you for a future council meeting and or distribution. No actions are being taken today. That is not the purpose of today's meeting. However, it might be helpful if you have a written summary and some suggestions about ways in which you could do things differently and ways in which you might want to take a look at your rules or your past practices and see if I can help identify some of the things that you have described that might help build trust and collaboration among staff and the council. So would that be helpful? And that could come forward to you for staff review and council review at the appropriate time and in the appropriate venue. And then the final piece is, you all reflected some priorities to me in our individual conversations. And this is what Laura was talking about earlier, and to create a framework to give you an idea of where staff and the council are on certain topics and what's been done and what hasn't been done. It would be very helpful to have that priority setting revisited. And just briefly, the things that I heard I heard a number of topics. However, there were about 5 that had some common ground, and it's financial stability, what we've talked about today, which is the council and council staff relations. A lot of discussion around racial justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion that council members and staff wish to discuss, housing issues, and reimagining policing. And then there were other topics that were also addressed that I've just listed them here briefly. It doesn't mean they aren't priorities and can't be priorities, but they weren't the ones that had the most common ground. And so the second part of my recommendation is, in addition to the summary report, would you be willing at some point in the future, and I'm thinking maybe late summer or early next fall, to talk about these priorities, come up with some common definitions, make sure they're in the right order, and I haven't missed anything, and come up with some common definitions, and then ask staff to go ahead and start working on goals and objectives tied to these priorities for your work ahead. So does that sound reasonable? Again, I don't want to cut you off at 4 if you're absolutely committed to spending the rest of the evening. I'm here and staff is here and of course council is here. However, I do want to be respectful of your time and your commitment. I know how difficult it is to do this kind of work for 3 hours in a non-personal environment, in a virtual environment. And so I would ask your thoughts about what you would like to do next. Eduardo, you raised your hand.
I wanted to reiterate what Councilmember Willis said, which is that without the other 2 council members present, it's not fair or wise for us to suggest moving forward. I think we need their input.
Okay. Do you think, Eduardo, do you think the creating an outline of what I heard today to give you that baseline from which to make that decision, would that be helpful?
Yeah, it's always interesting to see other people's perceptions of what took place.
Sure, absolutely. And that's why we do it, is because we know we don't always get it right. Hopefully we do. So I see Demlis has come on and has his hand raised. Would you like to comment on this?
Yes, and actually, really in relation to the comment that you made about coming back to discuss priorities potentially in early summer or in the fall, and I'm hoping that we can do it in the, sooner rather than later. The city's GARE team and I have been working on a number of things. They have the racial equity action plan, and I've been working on a reparations, equity, and inclusion package that we've coordinated. And we would really like to get that in front of folks sooner rather than later. And, of course, we want to make sure that other priorities are adhered to and acknowledged. But, we've been working within the parameters of the organization, and we would most definitely like to get that out sooner rather than later. So if it's, summer, let's try to get that on the books, please.
Yeah. Thank you. That's good feedback. Part of my suggestion to move it out a little bit farther is so that you get your budget issues for the upcoming year taken care of. And then I recall from the April 20th meeting some discussion about the need for additional meetings and closed sessions on other items. And so I didn't want to get into the way of your progress, but I wanted to keep these items on your radar screen should you wish to take them up. So Claudia, you have your hand raised. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I think I agree with, we are having a discussion about the budget, and we will need some time for that. Know that these important issues that had been raised, we don't want to hear it, but I just trying to see how we kind of like put that into the mix with all the work on, like, there is the stimulus, all the work on the budget, and also what Eduardo was commenting here, that the need for like the full city council to So I just,
Thank you very much. Good points. Are there any other thoughts? Gail?
Yeah, I just think we should hold off on scheduling another one and just see. I mean, I agree with what Claudia just said. We have the budget, we have the stimulus funding we have a lot coming up in the next couple of months. And then, you know, certain things are going to have to wait until after that. And just because we will be focused on the budget. So, you know, the summer is going to probably be busy too. And then we have our August break. So I think we should just hold off on saying what, you know, as far as priorities go, I think you listed some really good priorities, and I think a summary will be great to have, but I don't think we should go forward with scheduling anything. We could always come up with a request for another workshop at some point in the future. But and what Eduardo mentioned was also very true. When we don't have participants, it's not really making a difference, because, you know, if you're not going to have the whole council coming together to at least hear each other out, you're you know, you're missing a piece of the whole dynamics. And so I would rather we not schedule anything. And we'll be discussing priorities. I think you know them. You heard from our individual interviews. I think the city manager, the city attorney, you know our priorities based on issues we've already discussed and brought forward to the council. But we could bring more. We could have a discussion at the city council level at some point about priorities. As well. I don't know if we need a special meeting, but I think we could have one if we so desired in the future, but I'd rather not schedule one at this point.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. And Claudia, is there, I see your hand raised. Is that new?
no, it's like leftovers. I think like one thing that I will say also is that like we have also the city council, and this is the space also for setting priorities as well, with the policies that we are putting out.
Certainly. And you have many venues in which you can address your priorities and your future plans. And so, okay, so what I heard so far is that a written summation for your future consideration in whatever venue you would like is as an acceptable outcome at the end of today, and that you're going to wait a bit on determining whether or not you want to have a special meeting or take up priorities in a different venue, perhaps at a council meeting or related to a council meeting. So the primary outcome of today's meeting would be a summary report of what I heard, and it will be a draft, of course, because as Eduardo points out, each one of us has a different perspective, and you will all find areas in which that need attention in whatever report I would produce. So given that is the structure of our meeting, we are now just a few minutes past 4 o'clock, and Laura or Teresa and any of the council members, and Pamela, is there anything that you would like to say to wrap up? And otherwise, I'd be more than happy to charge off and try and write you a report.
I just really want to thank everybody's participation and honest feedback. I think conversation and dialogue is so helpful for understanding and be able to move forward. And thank you, Jean, so much for your work getting us ready for this and helping us today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. Teresa, any thoughts?
I echo Laura's comments. It's really a great opportunity to really get feedback from all of you and understand your perspectives. This has really been a terrific event. I would welcome at some point in the future having a conversation not only about what priorities, what policies the council finds very important, but also how to prioritize them. And so I think part of a goal setting isn't just identifying what's on the list, but it's helping us to order them so that we know what is the top priority in terms of timing. And so I would welcome that opportunity, and I really appreciate having this opportunity today to hear from all of you.
Pamela, any thoughts?
Yes, I'd just like to thank everyone for participating, and it is good to hear honest feedback and take some of the ideas away and just go forward and hopefully please the council, and we can all work together to make it a better environment for all of us.
Great, thank you. Council members, any final thoughts? And if not, I will encourage Vice Mayor to adjourn the meeting. Gail.
Yes, I do want to thank you, Jean. I think you are really an incredible facilitator. Your demeanor, your temperament, you have a calmness that really resonates. So I want to thank you for that. And I also enjoyed our one-on-one interview. So, and I also,
Carol.
and I enjoyed all the
Pretty good. I'm in a council meeting right now. I can call you back in a few seconds.
Eduardo, you're not
I'm also
muted.
unmuted.
Eduardo, you're not muted.
Hi, Carol.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that thank you very much. You made a and I enjoyed everybody's participation, and I enjoyed the opportunity to get some of my concerns or my thoughts out there.
Great. Thank you, Gail. Very thoughtful comments, and thoughtful comments from all participants. As Laura and Teresa and Pamela said, your honesty and candor is so important, and that's the underlying element to building the trust and the relationships going forward to get your work done and the work of the community done. So thank you once again. And Demolis, if you're available and you would like to adjourn the meeting, I wish you a lovely rest of your Saturday. And I thank you for the pleasure of your company today.
Thank you, Jean. And it is 4:07 and we are adjourned.
Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Good job.
Great job.
Be real honest in my survey.
Thank you, KCRT. Thank you, Jean.
You're welcome. Thank you, KCRT.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon and a happy Sunday.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye now.
Hmm.